The silver ship moved through space like a knife cutting through black silk. Commander Zixthara stood on the bridge, her tall blue form glowing softly under the ship's lights. Her forearms worked the control panels with practiced ease while data streams flowed directly into her mind through the neural implants at the base of her skull. The Valdrani Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. They had conquered worlds, built cities that floated in space, and created technology that could bend reality itself. Zixthara had seen it all in her 300 years of life. She had watched primitive species discover fire while her people traveled between stars in minutes. Today's mission was routine. Scout the outer rim systems, catalog any new life forms, and move on. The Empire was always looking for useful species to add to their collection. Some became workers. Others became soldiers. Most were simply ignored if they showed no potential. The ship's sensors beeped softly. Zixthara's implants processed the data instantly. A small blue planet orbited a yellow star. The third planet in the system showed signs of life. Primitive life, begin deep scan, she commanded. Her crew of 6 moved without speaking. Their implants connected them all in a shared network of thought. Words were rarely needed among the Valdrani. The results appeared in her mind like a flowing river of information. Carbon-based life forms, bipedal, average height of 1.7 meters, single neural organ located in the cranial cavity. No implants detected, no energy manipulation abilities. Technology level, primitive chemical pulsion. Zixthara felt a wave of disappointment flow through the neural link from her crew, another dead end. Another world full of beings who would never amount to anything useful. The creatures called themselves humans. They lived on a planet they named Earth. They had split themselves into hundreds of small groups that fought constantly over resources. They had barely managed to escape their planet's gravity well with crude rockets that burned fossil fuels. Their longest space journey had been to their own moon. They still use projectile weapons, reported her science officer, Kethmarn. Explosive chemical devices. Metal fragments propelled by controlled detonations. Zixthara's secondary arms tapped the command console in amusement. Such primitive violence. The Valdrani had moved beyond physical weapons centuries ago. Why throw metal when you could manipulate matter at the molecular level? Lifespan? She asked. Approximately 80 to 100 standard cycles, came the reply. They age rapidly and show no signs of genetic enhancement or life extension technology. Such brief lives. Zixthara had lived 3 times longer than their entire species' recorded history. How could beings with such short existence ever develop anything worthwhile? Wisdom came with time, and these humans had no time at all. The scan continued. The humans had split their single planet into competing factions. They poisoned their own air and water while fighting over territory. They had developed nuclear weapons and pointed them at each other like children playing with fire. Their global communication network was filled with arguments, lies, and pictures of small furry animals. Recommendation? Zixthara asked her crew through the neural link. The response was unanimous. Ignore protocol. File the report and move on. Species shows no potential for advancement. No useful resources, no remarkable abilities. Standard classification. Primitive backwater, non-threatening, no value. Zixthara began to compose the official report in her mind. The Imperial database would record Earth as another forgettable world in an endless galaxy of forgettable worlds. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when the humans had wiped themselves out or evolved into something interesting, another Valdrani ship might return to check on them, but something made her pause. A strange energy signature from the planet's surface. Not technology exactly, something else. What is that reading from the northern continent? She asked. Kethmarn's implants flickered with concentration. Unknown. The energy signature appears to be ... intentional, directed, but it uses no technology we recognize. Zixthara frowned. That was impossible. Energy manipulation required advanced neural implants and years of training. These humans barely understood electricity. They still burned fossil fuels to power their cities. The energy pulse came again, stronger this time. And then something incredible happened. A message appeared on their screens. Not sent through quantum entanglement or gravitational wave manipulation or any of the advanced communication methods the Valdrani knew. It came through simple radio waves, the most basic form of electromagnetic communication possible. The message was crude, barely understandable, but unmistakably directed at them. "We know you're there. We want to talk." The bridge fell silent. Even through their neural links, Zixtara could feel her crew's shock. How had these primitive beings detected their ship? Valdrani vessels used quantum displacement fields that made them invisible to any technology these humans possessed. "Source of the transmission?" Zixtara demanded. "A research facility on the largest northern continent. The energy signature is coming from the same location." Zixtara studied the data. A female human named Dr. Sarah Chun appeared to be leading the transmission effort. The facility was primitive by Valdrani standards but showed signs of creative adaptation. They had somehow modified their radio telescopes to detect quantum signatures impossible, yet the evidence was right in front of her. "They cannot have detected us," said Kethmarn. "Their technology is thousands of years behind ours, but they had. Somehow, using nothing but primitive electronics and crude mathematics, this Dr. Chun had spotted their invisible ship and figured out how to send a message." Zixtara felt something she rarely experienced. Curiosity, not the scientific curiosity that drove her species' endless quest for knowledge, but something more personal. How had they done it? "Shall we destroy the facility?" asked her weapons officer. "Prevent them from spreading knowledge of our presence?" Zixtara considered it. That would be the normal protocol. Primitive species were not supposed to detect Valdrani vessels. It violated the natural order of things. The advanced ruled the primitive. That was how the galaxy worked, but destruction seemed wasteful. These humans had accomplished something that should have been impossible. Perhaps they deserved a response. Against every protocol she had ever learned, Zixtara made a decision that would change everything. "Open a communication channel," she ordered. Her crew's shock rippled through the neural link. Communication with primitives was forbidden except under special circumstances. These humans had not been judged worthy of contact. "Commander, this violates Imperial Directive 779, Kethmarn pointed out. "I am aware," Zixtara replied, "but they detected us. That alone makes them unusual. Perhaps we should learn how before we dismiss them entirely." The truth was, Zixtara was bored. 10,000 years of Imperial dominance had made exploration routine. Every species they encountered followed predictable patterns. They developed fire, then metals, then electronics, then space travel. It always happened in the same order, at the same pace. The Valdrani could predict a species' entire development arc within a few hours of first contact. But these humans had done something unexpected. They had detected a Valdrani ship with primitive technology. That should not have been possible. The communication array hummed to life. Zixtara composed a simple message in the human's crude mathematical language. "We hear you, Dr. Chun." The response came back within minutes, filled with excitement and wonder that flowed through their primitive radio waves like music. "Thank you for responding. We have so many questions. We know we must seem primitive to you, but we want to learn. We want to understand." Zixtara almost smiled. Such innocent enthusiasm. These humans had no idea they were speaking to beings who could destroy their entire world with a thought. They were like children who had just discovered fire, eager to show it to anyone who would look. Still, they had detected her ship. That was worth something. "Very well, Dr. Chun," Zixtara transmitted back. "Let us talk." She had no idea that this simple decision would soon save her entire civilization. 3 weeks after first contact with the humans, Commander Zixtara received the most terrifying message of her long life. It came through the emergency quantum channel reserved only for empire-wide disasters. The message was simple but devastating. "All ships return to home sector immediately. Kotomiga, the Empire is dying. Zixthura's 4 hands froze over her control panels. Kotomiga had never been used in recorded Valdrani history. It meant the complete collapse of their civilization was possible. Her neural implants buzzed with confusion as she tried to process. What could threaten an empire that had conquered half the galaxy? The journey back to Valdrani space took 2 days. During the trip, fragments of information leaked through the quantum communication networks. Strange reports. Impossible things. Research stations going silent. Military commanders losing their connection to their fleets. Entire colonies requesting immediate evacuation. When Zixthara's ship finally reached the home system, she could barely believe what she saw. The great orbital cities that surrounded their homeworld looked like dying stars. Half their lights were dark. Ships drifted without control through space. Emergency beacons flashed red warnings in every direction. By the ancient codes, whispered Kethmarn through their neural link. What happened here? Zixthara guided her ship toward the main orbital station. Usually, traffic control would have contacted them by now, guiding them to a docking bay with the efficiency that made Valdrani civilization run smoothly. Instead, they received only automated messages warning them about quarantine protocols. They docked at an almost empty station, where thousands of Valdrani should have been moving through the corridors with purpose and grace. Zixthara found only a few dozen figures stumbling around like lost children. Their neural implants flickered weakly. Their eyes held no recognition or intelligence. A medical officer met them at the airlock. Dr. Vinthara looked exhausted, her usually perfect blue skin pale and marked with stress lines. Her neural implants sparked occasionally, as if struggling to function properly. Commander Zixthara, Dr. Vinthara said, speaking aloud instead of using the neural link. Thank the ancestors you are here. We need every uninfected mind we can find. Infected? Zixthara asked. Infected with what? Dr. Vinthara led them through corridors that should have been bustling with activity. Instead, they passed room after room filled with Valdrani sitting motionless, staring at nothing. Their neural implants were dark. We call it the void sickness. Dr. Vinthara explained. It appeared 3 weeks ago on the research moon of Kethmar. At first, we thought it was a simple neural implant malfunction. A few scientists lost connection to the research network. We sent repair teams. They entered a medical facility that looked more like a morgue. Hundreds of Valdrani lay on beds, alive but completely unresponsive. Machines monitored their life signs, but their neural implants remained dark and silent. The repair teams became infected within hours, Dr. Vinthara continued. Then the infection spread to the main research station. Then to the orbital platforms, then to the homeworld itself. Zixthara felt cold fear creeping through her system. How does it spread? Through the neural network. Every time an infected Valdrani connects to the system, the sickness moves to new hosts. It attacks the implants first, then the brain tissue that interfaces with them. Within days, the victim loses all higher brain functions. They become like empty shells. Kethmarn stepped closer to one of the beds. The Valdrani lying there had once been a fleet commander, judging by the rank markings on his uniform. Now he stared at the ceiling with empty eyes, breathing but not truly alive. How many? Zixthara asked quietly. Half the population of the homeworld is infected, Dr. Vinthara replied. 60% of our military forces. 70% of our research facilities. The numbers grow every day. Zixthara tried to process this information, but it seemed impossible. The Valdrani Empire had survived everything the galaxy could throw at them. They had defeated hostile alien species, survived stellar disasters, and conquered diseases that had wiped out entire civilizations. How could a simple infection destroy them so completely? What do our scientists say? She asked. Surely our medical technology can find a cure. Dr. Vinthara's expression grew even more grim. That is the worst part, Commander. Our best scientists are infected. The Central Research Institute went dark 4 days ago. The Medical Council lost 3/4 of its members yesterday. We are running out of minds capable of finding a solution. They walked through more corridors, past more rooms full of empty-eyed Valdrani. Zixtara noticed that the few healthy individuals they encountered moved carefully, avoiding direct neural contact with anyone else. The very network that made their civilization possible had become a pathway for destruction. "Show me the research data." Zixtara commanded. Dr. Vinthara led them to a secured laboratory where a handful of scientists worked in isolation. Their neural implants had been partially disconnected to prevent infection, leaving them to work. With primitive computer interfaces like ancient Valdrani from before the Great Enhancement, the head researcher, Dr. Mixon, looked up from the screen with tired eyes. "Commander, I am afraid we have little good news to report." The research data was confusing and contradictory. The void sickness seemed to behave differently each time they studied it. It adapted to their treatments faster than they could develop new ones. Every cure they created worked for a few hours, then failed as the infection learned to overcome it. "It is like the sickness thinks," Dr. Mixon explained. "Every time we attack it one way, it develops defenses against that attack. It learns from our attempts to cure it and becomes stronger." Zixtara studied the data streams flowing across the primitive screens. "What about physical treatments? Surgical removal of the implants?" "We tried that," Dr. Vanthara said sadly. "The infection has already bonded with the brain tissue. Removing the implants leaves the patient alive but mentally damaged. They lose most of their cognitive abilities. They become like—" She paused, unable to finish the sentence. "Like primitives," Zixtara completed. "Like the species we have conquered and dismissed." The irony was not lost on any of them. The Valdrani had spent thousands of years enhancing themselves, adding neural implants and technological augmentations that made them superior to all other life forms. Now that very enhancement was killing them. Over the following days, Zixtara watched her civilization crumble. Military commanders lost the ability to control their fleets. Scientists forgot how to operate their own equipment. Artists and philosophers fell silent, their enhanced minds no longer able to create or think. The Imperial Council called an emergency session, but half the council members were already infected. Those who remained argued constantly, unable to reach decisions without their full neural network to guide them. "We need help," Admiral Kithver said during one particularly desperate meeting. "We must contact our allied species." Surely someone else has encountered this type of infection. But their allied species were not really allies at all. They were conquered peoples who served the Valdrani out of fear, not loyalty. Most of them had been dismissed as primitive and incapable of advanced thinking. Why would they help their former oppressors? As the situation grew worse, some Valdrani began to suggest the unthinkable: contact with truly alien species. Not conquered primitives, but unknown civilizations that might have different approaches to the problem. What about the humans? Dr. Vanthara suggested during one late-night strategy session. "They detected our ship with primitive technology. Perhaps they think differently than we do." The suggestion was met with silence. Humans were the most primitive species they had encountered in decades. They still used chemical rockets and fought with metal projectiles. What could such backward creatures possibly know about Valdrani neural technology? But as more Valdrani fell to the void sickness each day, desperate ideas began to sound reasonable. Commander Zixtara found herself thinking about Dr. Sarah Chun and her impossible radio message. How had humans achieved something that should have been beyond their capabilities? On the 5th day after her return, Zixtara made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. She sent a message to Earth through the quantum communication array. The message was simple but devastating to Valdrani pride. "We are dying. Our science has failed. We request assistance." She sent the message despite the protests of the surviving council members. She sent it despite knowing that asking primitives for help would shame the Valdrani Empire forever. She sent it because her people were dying, and pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. The response from Dr. Chun came back within hours, filled with the same innocent enthusiasm Zixtara remembered from their first contact. "We will help however we can." Send us everything you know about this sickness. Our scientists are standing by. As Zixthara prepared the data transmission to Earth, she wondered if she was making the greatest mistake in Valdrani history. Or perhaps, she thought as she watched another research facility go dark, she was making the only choice that could save them all. Dr. Sarah Chun stared at the data streaming across her computer screen and felt her heart race with excitement and terror. The information the Valdrani had sent was beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Neural implant technology, biological, data from an alien species, and details about a plague that was destroying an empire that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. James Harrison from the next workstation. He was a virologist who had spent his entire career studying Earth diseases. Look at this neural integration. Their brains are connected to quantum computers. How do you even begin to understand something like this? Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. It had been 3 days since the Valdrani request for help arrived, and she had barely slept. The world's governments had moved faster than ever before, setting up an international research team in an abandoned military facility in Colorado. Scientists from every major nation had dropped everything to work on humanity's first chance to help an alien civilization. The team was unlike anything that had ever been assembled. Virologists worked next to computer programmers. Brain surgeons shared coffee with video game designers. Physicists argued with philosophers about the nature of consciousness. It was chaos, but it was productive chaos. "The problem is we're thinking like them," said Dr. Marcus Webb, looking up from his laptop. Marcus was an unusual addition to the team. He had spent 10 years designing artificial intelligence for video games before switching to bioinformatics. Most of the other scientists still treated him like an outsider, but Sarah had insisted he stay. "What do you mean?" asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's lead neurobiologist. Marcus pointed at the Valdrani data on his screen. "Look at how they've been attacking this problem. Everything is specialized. Their virus experts only study viruses. Their brain specialists only study brains. Their computer experts only study computers. But this plague affects all 3 systems at once." Dr. Harrison frowned. "That's how science works, Marcus? You need expertise in specific areas to make progress." "Maybe for us," Marcus replied. "But what if that's exactly why they can't solve this? What if being too specialized is their weakness?" Sarah felt something click in her mind. She pulled up the Valdrani reports on their failed cure attempts. Every approach had been narrow and focused. They tried biological treatments for the biological aspects, technological solutions for the implant problems, and neural therapies for the brain damage. Each approach worked for a little while, then failed as the plague adapted. "Marcus might be right," Sarah said slowly. "Look at these treatment attempts. They're trying to fight 3 separate problems instead of one combined problem." A new voice joined the conversation. "Maybe that's because it is one combined problem." Everyone turned to see Dr. Yuki Tanaka entering the lab. At 19, Yuki was the youngest member of the team and possibly the smartest. She had graduated from medical school at 16 and held advanced degrees in both biochemistry and computer science. Some of the older scientists had objected to including someone so young, but her ideas had already saved the project twice. "What do you mean, Yuki?" Sarah asked. I walked over to the main display screen and began pulling up different data sets. "I've been analyzing the plague's behavior patterns. Look at this." She highlighted sections of code-like sequences in the biological data. These aren't random mutations. They're following logical patterns like a computer program. Dr. Harrison shook his head. "Biological organisms don't work like computer programs. Evolution is random." "This isn't evolution," Yuki said firmly. "This is adaptation, programmed adaptation. Look at these sequences here." She pointed to complex molecular structures. "These match software algorithms for machine learning. The plague isn't just alive, it's smart." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Marcus was the first to speak. "You're saying this thing is like an AI virus? Something that can think and learn?" "Not like an AI virus," Yuki corrected. It is an AI virus. A hybrid biodigital organism that was probably designed to target the Valdrani's neural implants specifically. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. But that's impossible. Who could create something like that? The Valdrani are the most advanced species in the galaxy. Maybe they are, Sarah said quietly. But maybe they're not the only advanced species. Maybe someone else created this plague specifically to attack their greatest strength. The team spent the next 12 hours dissecting Yuki's theory. The more they looked, the more evidence they found. The plague wasn't a natural disease that had somehow learned to affect technology. It was an artificial creation designed to spread through the Valdrani neural network and destroy their civilization from within. Whoever made this knew exactly how Valdrani society works, Marcus observed. They knew about the implants, the neural networks, the dependency on shared consciousness. This plague is like a computer virus written specifically for Valdrani brains. But if it's artificial, Dr. Harrison asked, why can't the Valdrani figure that out? They're supposed to be thousands of years ahead of us technologically. Sarah thought about this problem as she stared at the data. Then something Marcus had said earlier came back to her. Because they're too specialized, she said. Their virus experts see a biological problem. Their computer experts see a technological problem. Their brain experts see a neurological problem. None of them are looking at it as all three things at once. Yuki nodded excitedly. Exactly. And because they're all connected through their neural networks, they're thinking too much alike. They can't see outside their own perspective. So what's the solution? Dr. Vasquez asked. Sarah looked around the room at their chaotic interdisciplinary team. Scientists from different countries, different backgrounds, different ways of thinking. Video game programmers working with brain surgeons. Teenagers collaborating with veteran researchers. Complete chaos by Valdrani standards. We think differently, she said. We approach problems from multiple angles at once. We're not connected by neural networks, so we can disagree with each other and come up with new ideas. Marcus pulled up his laptop and began typing rapidly. If this thing is part computer program, then maybe we can fight it like a computer program. What if we wrote a countervirus? But it's also biological, Dr. Harrison pointed out. You'd need something that could affect both digital and biological systems. Actually, Yuki said slowly, that might be possible. If the plague uses biodigital integration, then a cure could too. Something that disrupts the digital components while neutralizing the biological ones. Sarah felt excitement building. What kind of compound could do that? Yuki was already at a whiteboard drawing molecular structures. Something simple, actually. The plague's strength is its complexity. It can adapt to complex treatments because it has multiple systems to fall back on. But if we hit it with something too simple for it to process. Like what? Dr. Vasquez asked. Magnesium sulfate, Yuki said, writing the formula on the board. Epsom salt. The room erupted in laughter, but Yuki looked serious. I'm not joking, she said. Look at the plague's digital components. They're designed to interface with quantum processors and neural enhancement technology. They're incredibly sophisticated. But magnesium sulfate is just a simple salt. It disrupts electrical signals in the most basic way possible. Marcus stopped laughing and stared at the board. That's actually brilliant. The plague's AI components wouldn't know how to adapt to something that's simple. It would be like trying to use a supercomputer to defend against someone unplugging it from the wall. But would it work on the biological components? Dr. Harrison asked. Magnesium sulfate is already used to treat neural disorders, Dr. Vasquez said slowly. It can cross the blood-brain barrier and affect neural transmission. If the plague is interfering with normal brain function, it might reset the system, Sarah finished. Disrupt both the digital and biological components at the same time. The team worked through the night, refining the idea. The solution was elegantly simple. A combination of magnesium sulfate and a few other basic compounds delivered through a low-tech injection system that would bypass the neural implants entirely. No quantum processors, no advanced nanotechnology. Just simple chemistry affecting the body's natural electrical systems. The Valdrani will think we're crazy, Dr. Harrison said as they prepared their final report. Epsom salt as a cure for their super plague? They'll never believe it. Maybe, Sarah replied, uploading their data to the quantum communicator. But they asked for our help because their way wasn't working. Maybe it's time they tried thinking like primitives. As she sent humanity's solution to the dying Valdrani Empire, Sarah couldn't help but smile. The most advanced civilization in the galaxy was about to be saved by the kind of simple chemistry that humans had been using for hundreds of years. Sometimes, the best solutions were the ones nobody expected. Commander Zixthara stood in the medical bay watching Dr. Venthara read the human transmission for the third time. The Valdrani doctor's expression grew more confused with each reading. Her neural implants flickered weakly as she tried to process the information. This cannot be correct, Dr. Venthara said finally. The humans are suggesting we treat the void sickness with ... mineral salts? Zixthara looked at the data herself. After weeks of waiting for humanity's response, she had expected complex formulas, advanced nanotechnology, or at least some sophisticated treatment that would require years to develop and test. Instead, the humans had sent instructions for mixing. Common chemical compounds that any first-year chemistry student could create. Magnesium sulfate, potassium chloride, and sodium bicarbonate, she read aloud. Mixed in simple water solution and injected directly into the bloodstream. No neural interface required. Dr. Mixton, the head researcher, shook his head in disbelief. This is what they consider advanced medicine? These are the same compounds our ancestors used before we developed proper molecular therapy. It is like suggesting we treat a quantum computer malfunction by hitting it with a rock. The other Valdrani scientists murmured agreement. They had asked the humans for help out of desperation, but this solution seemed too primitive to take seriously. How? Could basic mineral salts cure a plague that had defeated their most advanced medical technology? Perhaps we should test it, Dr. Venthara suggested quietly. We have tried everything else. Dr. Mixton's expression showed his disgust. Test primitive chemicals on Valdrani citizens? It would be shameful. What if word spread that we are so desperate we are using prehistoric medicine? But Zixthara was thinking about Dr. Sarah Chun and her impossible radio detection. The humans had already done one thing that should have been impossible. Maybe they could do another. How long to prepare this treatment? She asked. Minutes, Dr. Venthara replied. The compounds are available in any basic medical facility. The preparation is so simple that a child could do it. Zixthara made her decision. Prepare enough for 10 test subjects. If these humans are wrong, we lose nothing. If they are right, ... She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. If the humans were right, they might save the entire Valdrani Empire with something that cost less than a cup of coffee. Doctor? Venthara prepared the solution in a small laboratory away from the main medical facility. She worked alone, partly to maintain secrecy and partly because most of her staff were now infected with the void sickness. The preparation was embarrassingly simple. She felt like a primitive healer mixing magic potions instead of an advanced medical officer. The first test subject was Fleet Commander Rythvin, who had been infected for 6 days. He lay motionless on the medical bed, his neural implants dark and silent. His eyes stared at nothing. According to all their instruments, his brain activity was minimal. The man who had once commanded 1,000 ships was now barely more alive. Then a plant, Dr. Venthara hesitated with the injection device in her hand. The human solution looked like nothing more than slightly salty water. It seemed impossible that such a simple mixture could succeed where their most advanced treatments had failed, but they had no other options left. She injected the solution directly into Rythvin's arm and waited. According to the human instructions, results should appear within minutes if the treatment worked. Dr. Venthara watched the monitors, expecting nothing to happen. Then, after exactly 4 minutes, something incredible occurred. Rythvin blinked. Dr. Venthara leaned forward, certain she had imagined it. But then Rythvin blinked again. His eyes moved, focusing on the ceiling above him. Slowly, very slowly, he turned his head to look at her. Where am I? He whispered. Dr. Venthara nearly dropped her medical scanner. Commander Rythven, can you understand me? Yes, I think so. What happened? I remember being in my command center and then nothing. Darkness, like I was drowning in empty space. Dr. Venthara quickly checked his neural implants. They were coming back online, systems activating one by one as his brain reconnected with the technology. Within an hour, Fleet Commander Rythven was sitting up, alert and demanding to know how long he had been unconscious. Word of the miracle spread quickly through the medical facility. Dr. Venthara tested the human cure on 9 more infected Valdrani. The results were the same every time. Within minutes of injection, the patients began to recover. Within hours, they were completely cured. The treatment worked so fast that it seemed like magic. Valdrani, who had been empty shells for weeks, suddenly returned to full consciousness. Their neural implants reactivated. Their memories returned. It was as if the void sickness had never touched them. Dr. Mixton arrived at the testing facility to see the results for himself. He found all 10 test subjects sitting up, talking, and connecting to the neural network as if nothing had happened. His pride as a Valdrani scientist warred with his amazement at what the primitive humans had accomplished. How is this possible? He demanded. Our most advanced treatments failed, but these simple chemicals succeed? It makes no sense. Dr. Venthara shared the detailed explanation the humans had sent along with their cure. Dr. Sarah Shun had included notes explaining their theory about the plague being a bio-digital hybrid that targeted the Valdrani's advanced neural systems. According to Dr. Chun, Dr. Venthara explained, the void sickness is actually an artificial creation designed specifically to attack our implant technology. Our treatments failed because we were trying to fight it with the same type of advanced systems it was designed to overcome. And this simple salt mixture works because it is too primitive for the plague to understand or adapt to. The minerals disrupt the plague's digital components by interfering with basic electrical signals in the brain. Meanwhile, they also neutralize the biological components by restoring normal neural chemistry. The plague cannot defend against something so simple because it was never programmed to handle that type of attack. Dr. Mixton stared at the formula on his screen. So we were outsmarted by our own sophistication. It appears so. Within 6 hours of the successful tests, the human cure was being distributed throughout the Valdrani medical system. The preparation was so simple that every medical facility could create it immediately. No special equipment was needed, no rare materials, no advanced technology. Just basic chemistry that any species with industrial capability could produce. The results were immediate and dramatic. Infected Valdrani began recovering faster than anyone had dared hope. Medical facilities that had been filled with empty-eyed victims became busy with celebrating families as their loved ones returned to consciousness. Military commanders reconnected with their fleets. Scientists returned to their laboratories. Artists and philosophers began creating again. Commander Zixthara stood on the observation deck of the main orbital station, watching as the lights of their cities began coming back to life. Ships that had drifted dead in space were moving again under their own power. Communication networks that had been silent for weeks filled with voices of the recovered, but as the immediate crisis passed, a deeper realization began to settle over the Valdrani Empire. They had been saved not by their own advanced science, but by the creativity and simple thinking of a species they had dismissed as primitive. The humans had solved in days what the greatest Valdrani minds could not solve in weeks. The psychological impact was devastating. For thousands of years, the Valdrani had believed their superiority came from their advanced technology and enhanced intelligence. They had built their entire identity around being the most sophisticated species in the galaxy. Now they discovered that their sophistication had become a weakness. Dr. Venthara found herself thinking about the human team that had saved them. According to the communication logs, the cure had been developed by a chaotic group of scientists. from different backgrounds working together without neural linking. They had argued, disagreed, and approached the problem from dozens of different angles simultaneously. Such disorder would be impossible in Valdrani society. Their neural networks ensured that everyone thought in harmony, building on each other's ideas in logical progression. It was efficient and elegant. But it also meant they all shared the same blind spots. The humans, with their disconnected minds and primitive communication, could see things that the unified Valdrani consciousness could not. Their weakness had become their strength. Reports began arriving from across the empire as the cure spread to every infected world. The recovery rate was nearly perfect. The void sickness that had threatened to destroy their civilization was being eliminated by a treatment that cost almost nothing to produce, but even as they celebrated their survival, many Valdrani felt a deep sense of unease. If they could be saved by such simple means, what did that say about their vaunted superiority? How many other problems could be solved by thinking differently instead of thinking more advanced? Commander Zixtara composed a message to Dr. Sarah. Chun on Earth, it was the hardest message she had ever written. Dr. Chun, the treatment you provided has saved our empire. In 24 hours you accomplished what we could not accomplish in weeks. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But more than that, you... 6 months after the cure, Commander Zixtara walked through the streets of New Valdros, the rebuilt capital city of her homeworld. Everything looked the same as before the plague, but she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The gleaming towers still reached toward the sky. The neural network still connected every citizen. The technology still worked perfectly. But something fundamental had changed in the heart of Valdrani civilization. She stopped at a small cafe where young Valdrani gathered without their neural implants activated. This would have been unthinkable before the plague. No Valdrani would choose to disconnect from the network that made them superior to other species. But now, more and more citizens were experimenting with what they called primitive thinking. Commander Zixtara? A voice called from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Kithara, one of the youngest members of the Research Council. But instead of the usual formal neural greeting, the young scientist spoke aloud and smiled with genuine warmth. I wanted to thank you, Dr. Kithara continued. Your decision to contact the humans saved us all. Zixtara felt uncomfortable with the praise. I only did what desperation demanded. Anyone would have done the same. No, Dr. Kithara said firmly. Most commanders would have followed protocol. They would have continued trying Valdrani solutions even as our people died. You chose to ask for help from beings we considered inferior. That took courage. They walked together through the city center, where a surprising sight awaited them. A group of human children played in the central plaza while their parents talked with Valdrani citizens. The humans had arrived 3 weeks ago as part of the new cultural exchange program that the Valdrani Council had established. Watching the children run and laugh, Zixtara marveled at how different they were from young Valdrani. Human children seemed to think in random directions, asking impossible questions and making connections that no logical mind would consider. Valdrani children, connected to the neural network from birth, learned in orderly progression and rarely surprised their teachers. The humans think so differently, Dr. Kithara observed. Sometimes I watch them solve problems and wonder how their minds work. They make leaps of logic that should be impossible, yet somehow reach correct conclusions. Zixtara nodded. She had been studying human thought patterns for months, trying to understand how such a primitive species had succeeded where the Valdrani failed. The answer was both simple and disturbing. They think like individuals, she said. Each human mind works independently, developing unique perspectives. When they come together, they bring different ideas that can combine in unexpected ways. We think as a collective, which makes us efficient but limits our creativity. Dr. Kithara looked troubled. Are you saying our neural network is a weakness? Not a weakness, Zixtara replied carefully, but perhaps not the pure strength we believed it to be. The network makes us powerful, but it also makes us think alike. When we all approach a problem the same way, we all miss the same solutions. They paused to watch a human scientist named Dr. Lisa Park working with a group of Valdrani researchers. Dr. Park was demonstrating something she called brainstorming, where team members suggested ideas without worrying about whether they made logical sense. The Valdrani scientists looked confused by the apparent chaos, but Zixthara could see the value in the process. "Commander," Dr. Cathara said quietly, "some of our people are saying we should abandon the neural networks entirely. They believe we should try to think like humans." This was the conversation Zixthara had been dreading. In the months since the cure, a movement had grown among younger Valdrani to reject their technological enhancements. They called themselves the disconnected and argued that true wisdom came from individual thinking rather than collective processing. "That would be a mistake," Zixthara said. "The neural networks are part of who we are. The solution is not to become human, but to learn from humans while remaining Valdrani." But even as she said it, Zixthara wondered if that was possible. The plague had revealed a fundamental flaw in Valdrani thinking. Their pursuit of technological perfection had made them rigid and predictable. They had gained processing power, but lost the ability to think outside established patterns. A communication alert chimed in her neural implant. The High Council was calling an emergency session to address what they were calling the philosophical crisis. Zixthara sighed and prepared to return to the council chambers, where the greatest minds of the empire would debate the future of their civilization. The council meeting was unlike any in Valdrani history. For the first time, members argued openly. Instead of reaching consensus through neural harmony, some demanded a return to pure Valdrani traditions, rejecting any influence from primitive species. Others called for complete transformation, abandoning their technological advantages to think like humans. "We are losing our identity," declared Council Elder Mithandra. "Our young people disconnect from the networks. Our scientists question methods that have served us for millennia. This human influence is destroying us from within." "Perhaps destruction is what we need," replied Council Member Vithkora, one of the youngest ever elected to the position. "The plague showed us that our old ways led to weakness. Maybe it is time to try something new." The debate continued for hours without resolution. The neural network that once ensured quick decisions now carried the confusion and fear of a civilization questioning its own foundations. Zixthara listened to the arguments and realized that her people were experiencing something they had never known before. Doubt. That evening, Zixthara received an unexpected visitor in her quarters. Dr. Sarah Chun had arrived on the first human diplomatic mission to the Valdrani homeworld. The small human scientist looked nervous but determined as she was escorted into the commander's private chambers. "Dr. Chun," Zixthara said, rising to greet her guest, "I have wanted to meet you in person since you saved our civilization." Sarah smiled, but Zixthara could sense her discomfort. "Commander, I came because I'm worried about what my people's influence might be doing to yours. I've heard about the conflicts in your society. You feel responsible?" "Partly," Sarah admitted. "When we sent you the cure, we only thought about saving lives. We didn't consider how it might change your culture." Zixthara gestured for her guest to sit. "Dr. Chen, may I ask you something? How do humans handle disagreement? When your people cannot agree on important decisions, what do you do?" Sarah looked surprised by the question. "We argue, I suppose. We debate. Sometimes we vote. Often we compromise. It's messy and inefficient, but somehow we usually figure things out. But how do you maintain unity when individuals think so differently?" "I'm not sure we do maintain unity," Sarah said thoughtfully. "We're probably the most divided species on our planet. We fight constantly about everything. But maybe that's our strength. When we face a real crisis, like helping you with the plague, we can put aside our differences and work together." Zixthara pondered this. The Valdrani had always valued harmony and consensus. The idea of a species that succeeded despite constant internal conflict seemed impossible. "Dr. Chun, do you think it is possible for my people to learn your ways without losing what makes us Valdrani?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I think the question isn't whether you should become like us, she said finally. The question is whether you can become something new, something that combines the best of both approaches. Over the following weeks, Zixthara worked with human advisors and progressive Valdrani scientists to develop what they called the adaptive protocol. Instead of abandoning the neural networks or rejecting human influence, they created a new system that alternated between collective and individual thinking. For routine decisions and established procedures, Valdrani would use their neural networks. For efficient coordination. But for creative problems and new challenges, they would disconnect and think as individuals, bringing diverse perspectives together through discussion rather than neural consensus. The first test came when another alien species, the Kethmori, requested help with their own crisis. In the old system, the Valdrani would have approached the problem through established protocols, probably failing as they had with their own plague. But using the adaptive protocol, teams of disconnected Valdrani worked with human consultants to develop innovative solutions. The success led to more requests for help from other species. Civilizations that the Valdrani had once dismissed as primitive suddenly became valuable partners. The empire that had once ruled through technological superiority began leading through collaborative wisdom, standing in the council chambers. A year after the plague, Zixthara addressed the assembled leaders of what was now called the Galactic Adaptive Alliance. Representatives from dozens of species filled the hall, each bringing their own perspectives and approaches to shared challenges. We gathered today not as superior and inferior species, she said, but as different minds working toward common goals. The Valdrani Empire that existed before the plague is gone forever. In its place, we are building something better, something that honors both our technological achievements and the wisdom of diversity.